Hello developers, welcome back. Today in this lesson we will implement full OAuth2 authorization using this Laravel Passport package. So you must have brief info about what are OAuth2. I have already explained it in the previous lesson. You must watch that video also. I will put the link of it in the video description. Before moving ahead, a quick reminder, if you are new to this channel, hit the red subscribe button and press bell icon so when I upload new videos you get notified. Now let's start. I have already created a fresh Laravel 7 app, that is server.test, and here I have already implemented the default login registration feature, and I have also created a post route, and on this page you can see some dummy posts. So now let's see this in the editor. Here in the routes web.php, here is the post route, and in the app http controller post controller, here is the index where I have written the view post index, and here is the all posts. And next in the resources views post index.blade, here I have printed the all posts. I have also installed the another fresh Laravel app, that is client.test. In this app I have only implemented default login registration feature, nothing else is implemented here. Now here in the server Laravel app, here I will install the passport package. So let's see the installation step. We need to run this composer require Laravel passport inside this server app. So in the terminal, I am already in the Laravel server app. Here I'll run composer require Laravel passport. Now it is installed. Next in the documentation, here we will run the migrate command. So in the terminal, php migrate is done. Now we go to the database, refresh, and here it has created the 5 tables. Next we'll need to run this passport install command. It's done. Now let's see the next step. Our next step is to use has API token trait in the users table. So in the editor, let's close this and let's open the user model. Here I'll use has API token trait. Next let's import its class. This one, Laravel Passport has API token. Now let's go to documentation, and our next step is to register passport route in the OAuth service provider. So in the editor we will navigate to providers, OAuth service provider. Right here in the boot method we will paste that passport route and make sure to import class. This one, Laravel passport. And next step is in the config auth.php. Right here in the API we need to set driver passport. So next in the config auth.php, here in the API we will replace this token with passport. Now our basic configuration for passport is done. Next we will implement the front end. So here in the front end quick start, we will run this command. This command going to generate Vue.js components in the resources.js components directory. Let's see. So let's copy this, and in the terminal, here I'll run vendor publish passport components, and here it has created the Vue components. So in the editor, let's navigate to resources.js components. Here is the new directory passport, and here we have 3 new components: authorized clients.view, clients.view, and personal access token.view components. Now we need to register these components in the app.js, and we will copy these and paste that in the app.js right here. Now we need to compile these components. So in the terminal, I have already executed the npm install. So next I will run npm run dev. It's done. Now to display these components in the front end, I'll create a new route. So in the routes web.php, here I'll say get route developers and controller is developers controller at index. Now let's create this controller. So in the terminal I'll run php artisan make controller developers controller is done. Now let's navigate to the http controllers developers controllers. Here I'll create constructor and I'll add middleware $this middleware auth, and next I'll create method index and it is going to return view developers dot index. Now let's create this blade file. So in the resources in the view directory, here I'll create developers index.blade.php. Now here I am going to copy the markup from home blade.php. Now let's see this in the browser if it is working. So in the server.test, let's navigate to developers route and it is navigated to login page because we have added the auth middleware and I have already created an account. So let's login it. harish@example.com, password. Here it is, this developers route is working. Now here what I will do, on this page I will display these passport components. So from the documentation I am going to copy these tags and I will paste that in the developers index.blade file and paste that right here. And right here let's say developers dashboard. These tags are these view components. Now let's go to browser and refresh and here we go, we get the two components, OAuth client and personal access token. And you may ask that here we have displayed the three components but it has displayed only two components. That is because the first component is the passport client, that is right here, OAuth client. In this component we will register a third-party client app and this passport authorized client component will show the all apps that is authorized. Right now we don't have any authorized app, that's why it is not visible here. And next component is the personal access token. In this personal access token we create a new token and that token can be used anywhere in the third-party client to access the API without the typical authorization redirect flow. Let's see an example of it. So here let's say app name is example and create. Now here it has created a token for us, and if we go to the editor and in the routes api.php, and here we have already a default route. Here middleware is auth API and in this route it will going to return authenticated user. Let's see this in the postman. Here our URL is http server.test and api/user. Next in the headers here I'll pass accept application JSON and content type is application JSON, and next in the third parameter we will pass authorization bearer, and next we paste this personal access token right here. And then now let's send, and here we go, it has returned the authenticated user. If we send it without authorization key, it will give us message unauthenticated. We have already created a dedicated video on this personal access token. In that video I have explained how you can use this passport personal access token to create single page application in the Vue app. I will put the link of it in the video description. You can also watch that. Now let's remove this. Next we will implement the OAuth authorization. So server side configuration is done. Next we will work on this client side. I have already registered account, so let's log in this harish@example.com and password. So in the terminal, here I will split this terminal into sections, and now navigate to client tab and let's open this in the editor. I am going to change the color of this editor so you can easily recognize the project. So this one is the client app and this editor is for the server app. Now in this client app I will create a redirect and callback routes. So in the routes web.php, here I'll create get route OAuth redirect and action is OAuth controller at redirect, and second route is the OAuth callback and action is OAuth controller at callback. Now let's create this controller. PHP artisan make controller OAuth controller. So in the app http controller OAuth controller, here I'll create method redirect and second method is callback. Now in the terminal, in the server app, if we see the PHP artisan route list, now here in this route you will see that Passport has created these many routes. We are going to focus on this OAuth authorize route. So from the client app, in this redirect method we will redirect to the servers this OAuth authorized path. So in the client app, here in the redirect we will say return redirect, and here we will pass the http server.test/OAuth authorize. Next, here we also need to attach some queries, and this query will contain the client ID and some other options. So let's create this query. So here I'll say $query is equal to http build query, and in the array here I'll pass client ID. We will create this client ID in a moment. Next is the redirect URI, and that is going to be http client.test/OAuth/callback. This route path is this one, OAuth callback. Next, here we need to pass the response type, and the response type is code. Now here we need the client ID. So for that, in the browser, in the server app, we will navigate to developers page, and here we will create new client. Let's say client name is example and the redirect URL is this one. Now let's create this, and here we go. It has created the client ID 3 and the secret right here. We need client ID. Let's copy this and paste that here. This secret ID will be needed in the callback method. We will see this in a moment. Now when we hit this route, it is going to redirect to this server authorized path, and then in the server side, if we authorize, it is going to hit this callback route. So here what I'll do, here I'll say request $request, and next let's dump the request all. Next, in the resources views home.blade, here I'll create anchor. Let's say text is authorize from server, and in this href attribute I will pass this OAuth redirect. Now let's go to browser, and in the client tab refresh. Let me zoom a little bit. and here is the authorize from server. Now if we click this link, you will see that it has redirected us to server.test, and here it is asking for the authorization. You may have seen this kind of feature in the Google, Facebook, GitHub APIs. The most common is the login with Facebook, Twitter or Google. Now if we authorize, and it redirected back to the client OAuth callback path, and here it has given us the code. Here in this app we were already logged in, so if we log out and then if we try to authorize from server, it redirected to server.test, but it has asked for login first. So now login, immediately it asks for authorization. Now authorize, in the client app it given us the authorization code. Now let's close this. Now in this callback method we will use this code to fetch the access token from the server. So here what we will do, here I'll say $response is equal to http post, and make sure to import this HTTP class right here. If you are not familiar with this HTTP, it is the new feature added into the Laravel 7, and this HTTP class is built on top of 𝐲𝐸L library. If you are working with below Laravel 7, then you can use 𝐲𝐸L library to execute this request. Now in this HTTP post method, here I will send the post request to http server.test OAuth token, and in the next parameter I'll pass grant type. Grant type is authorization code, and client ID is, that is this one 3, and next we pass the client secret, and that client secret is developers this secret. Let's paste it right here. Next we need to pass the redirect URL, that is going to be this, and finally we need to pass the code, that is $request code. Now let's dump the $response JSON. Generally these client ID and secret must be in the configuration file, but for our example purpose let's keep it here. Next in the client app, navigate to home page. Now let's click the authorize from server and authorize. Now we get the token type, bearer, expiry time, access token and refresh token. Next I am going to store them into the database. So in the terminal here I am going to create a new model, PHP artisan make model OAuth token, and then flag for migration, and here it is created for us. Next in the client app, here is the OAuth token. Let's set here guarded empty array, and in the database migrations, here is the OAuth token migration, and here I'll create $table big integer user ID and $table text access token. Now let's run the migration. PHP artisan migrate. Let's close this. Next in the users model, here I'll create user token relation. So method token, and it is going to return $this has one OAuth token class. It's done. Next, right here in the OAuth controller, in the callback method, here I'll say $response is equal to response JSON, and then first $request user token delete. First I will delete token if already exists, and then we will create a new token. So $request user token create, and here I'll pass access token $response access token, and then I will redirect back to home. Now let's try this. So let's navigate to home page and authorize from the server, and it is done. We are redirected back to the home page. Now this time we did not see the authorization window. Why is that? That is because if we go to the server app and refresh, now here in the authorized app you will see, and we have already authorized these app. That's why it has not asked for the authorization. Now if we revoke it, ask for authorization again, and immediately it has shown the authorization model. And let's authorize this, and now we are authorized and redirected back to the client home page. And in the database, here we refresh, and here in the OAuth tokens table we have user ID, and this is the access token. Now what our next step is, we will fetch the ports from the server and display it right here. So first in the server app we need to create the API that returns the all ports. So in the server app, here in the API route, I'll create get route ports and API ports controller at index. And next here I will also add middleware auth API. Now let's create this post controller. So in the terminal, PHP artisan make controller API ports controller, and it's done. Next in the API post API controller, here I'll create method index, and it is going to return all ports. Make sure to import this class. It's done. Next in the client app, in the home controller, in this index method, here I'll say $ports is equal to empty array, and then here I'll say if auth user token, if a user has a token, and then we will fetch the ports from the server API. So here I'll say $response is equal to HTTP with headers, and here I'll pass accept application JSON and authorization bearer dot auth user token access token, and then get response from http server.test API/ports. So what here we did, we call the HTTP and pass the headers that it accepts the application JSON, and we pass the authorization header that is bearer, and then we pass the access token, and next we send the get request to server.test API post, and next here I'll say if $response status is 200, then post is equal to $response JSON, and then we will pass this post right here in the view. Post is equal to $post. Next we will need to display this post in the front end. So in the views home.blade, here I am going to say if not auth user token. If user doesn't have token, then it should display this authorize from server anchor link. And next here I'll print all the posts. So for each $posts as $post, and then here I'll say div, let's say class is padding y3 and border bottom, and next in h3 tag $post title, in the div $post body. Is done. Now let's go to browser. In the client tab, refresh, the response, let's dump this. Now let's refresh, and here we get the post from the server. It is working. So why it has not printed right here? Here is the issue. The issue is that we have get the response in array, but we are treating this post as the object. So let's fix this. Now it's done. Next in the post controller, remove this, refresh, and here we go. We get the post from the server app. Now in the server, if we go to developers, here we have one app is authorized. If we revoke it, and in the database, let's remove this. Next in the client app, refresh, we get the authorized from server. As we authorize it, and after authorization we get the data from the server app. Let's review what we have implemented here. First, in the server app, we have created a new client. Here we pass the client name, and then here in the redirect URL we pass the callback URL, and it has created the client ID and secret for the client app. And then in the client app, here we have created two routes. One is the OAuth redirect and second is the OAuth callback. In the redirect method, we redirected to the server auth authorization path, and it has the queries, and in this query we have client ID, redirect callback URL, and the response code. And when this request is authorized, it will hit this callback method, and in this callback method we get the authorization code, and then we use that authorization code to get the access token. So here in this callback method, hit this server OAuth token path, and here we pass the grant type authorization code, client ID, client secret, redirect callback URL, and then code which we get from the authorization. And next we get the response data, and that we have stored in the auth tokens table. And next in the home controller, we check if a user has a token. If user has a token, then it is going to fetch the post from the server API post. So here we hit this API with the headers accept application JSON, and then we attach the authorization bearer user access token, and here we get the response post, and then we pass that to this view. This is all in this today's lesson. In the next lesson we will see the scopes. So thanks for watching. If you like the tutorial, hit the like button, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe us. See you in the next lesson.